where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see.
A big, powerful America, and shoot them for what?
On that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other.
I want you to imagine that you're on your way to help. We've been hit by a natural disaster, and you are carrying supplies, right, that would potentially help these people. Let's say your employer gave it to you, or however you came about these supplies. When you get to the area, the perimeter of the area, you're asked to wait, and you're asked to wait by FEMA, Red Cross, all the normal agencies responsible. And you're at some point you realize that these people aren't gonna really let you in, so you sneak in anyway, and you distribute supplies and find out that nothing's really being done by these agencies that asked you to wait. And you come to find out that they didn't let you distribute supplies because you're not on the distributors list. Now, today we'll be talking about really the apocalypse and the Renaissance, and the idea is we'll be referencing two books in particular, and also just kind of some of the background information that I've scurried up over the years thinking about this, right? In terms of the two books we'll be referencing, there is A Field Guide to the Apocalypse by Athena Atkins, and the Disaster Survival Guide by Marie D. Jones, right? Now, the opening for this book isn't found in one of these particular references, and in fact, like, Marie D. Jones of the Disaster Survival Guide, she seems honestly too hopeful for the national response to disasters, for my liking in particular. But there was an instance where a man on Twitter made a post about a particular disaster, and that was kind of enlightening. When it comes down to today, it's important that people realize that this idea of this society that we run on, it is this version of society. I think we should understand that this is capitalism unhinged. This idea of really what we experience in our day-to-day lives, this is really irresponsible. This is kind of this is really due. A lot of it is due to a bottleneck of really people who are very much trying to derail this system that we have. I'm not particularly for or against capitalism. I don't think the conversation is capitalism versus socialism. I think when it comes down to future generations, I think we really have to think about and use our brain power to figure out what comes next. And when it comes down to this idea of an apocalypse, it's increasing in likeness. It's increasing in likeliness the more we move, or the further we move on in time. And in terms of this particular segment, you guys, I really want you guys to understand that we don't need to be passive participants with a lot of society right now, but we don't necessarily need to be the most active participants in terms of the prepper who has gone completely off the rails with or completely, I'm not going to say off the rails, but he separated. A lot of preppers separate themselves from society. In terms of what we're looking at today, I really want you guys to understand Egypt is said to have lasted for thousands of years, and in terms of what we have today, the resilience that we want to instill in a society, we should understand, and we should understand how to really carry on as a society in a way that's really best for future generations. Now, our particular society, if we go on this track, it's not really a hot take to say that things won't really last long periods of time. And this idea of an apocalypse, this is becoming more likely, as we increase in time, because of, of course, natural disasters are going to become more frequent, but also man-made stresses that we, in terms of the concept of being a significant factor for an apocalypse. When I think about apocalypse, I think about events that really end civilized society, right? And we really have to think about what we're doing today, and in a concept of how we can, in a concept of comparing ourselves to civilizations, like Egypt, like the Egyptians, or likely other civilizations. The idea here of the idea here of the Renaissance, this is due to kind of a realization of what we have, and realization of what we have in terms of understanding that for its faults, there are good things about society, and things that we should take along with us in terms of the repair of society, in terms of repairing society, rather than a demolition that would be much more destructive. Now, this idea of really these books in general, they talk about a variety of things, and about really what it would, the knowledge that would really help us become more resilient. But one thing I really like about particularly like a field guide to the apocalypse is Athena puts it in a way that is very in terms of frames the definition of, or kind of helps redefine the idea of the human experience as we are the civil, we're the humans that survived. And in terms of understanding that, we have been hit by a lot of things in our past and in our history, and natural selection has selected for us to survive. And I want people to understand that in terms of really the idea of defining what what it means to be human today. Now, this idea of a natural disaster and this definition of a human, I really want people to understand that we have not only ability to survive, natural disasters, but come out stronger and more resilient from natural disasters, and a positive, there's a positive that may not be immediately, it may not be something that we immediately look at, but in terms of the positive aspects of survival and surviving apocalypse, think about things like, for instance, this idea of COVID and what it's done to society. A lot of people are working from home now. Remote work is becoming more of a thing, and where before we wouldn't see that, So there is, even in recent events, we can kind of see that there is a kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, or just a light period in dark times. Now this idea of disasters and how society responds. There is, at some point, this brought up how there's an organization called NOAA, and I forget exactly what that stands for, but just the idea of a natural disaster, they kind of frame this in terms of cost, and it is something that is a lot of times very costly to fix. And there is, please, I encourage you to do some research on this idea of really insurance and insurance companies and how they respond to this, because it does appear that these companies are finding ways to get out of operating the way they should, no matter how much time and resources you've put into this particular this particular premium that you have, in terms of the tendency and ability to essentially turn around and tell you, oh no, that's not covered. Seems to be tremendous incentive for these companies to do that. And just like when it comes down to the introduction, we're looking at capitalism unhinged right now in terms of the way things are. And this is very much something that is troubling when it comes down to natural disasters, in terms of our national response, but most certainly the insurance, the way in which we're supposed to cover ourselves. Those are also things that we need to look at. Now, at some point, we look at the top disasters in the world, and what's funny is a lot of them have not really occurred in more Western countries. They're like, they're not really on the list, which is in one case you would say, oh, that's really good. In another case you say, oh, our time's running out. In terms of we're overdue. But in in terms of the top disasters, we have there are, like, the world faces a lot of natural disasters, and in terms of us in particular, we run into things like wildfires that are pretty frequent, but definitely something that seems to be growing in prevalence and just the society in general. Um, and just an interesting note here: earthquakes aren't. We can't detect earthquakes. I didn't know that in particular, but apparently we don't have. We don't really understand so much when it comes down to the natural environment. I am a bit surprised that we can't predict and understand and detect earthquakes before they happen, and that is definitely kind of puts in perspective of how much we really understand about the natural environment itself. And another thing is mass shootings are becoming more popular. When people think of apocalypse, the idea of natural disasters, these things are, you know, it's looking more and more like we'll be the agents of our own destruction in so many different ways. But apparently, mass shootings would also be one of them. Including, right alongside, or right kind of, or not right alongside, but the idea of a nuclear apocalypse, of course, being the top, right? Because there's a I forget what newspaper reported this, but like some guys like, oh yeah, well, if things come to, bombs and nuclear wars, we're more technologically advanced, so the nuclear bombs are going to be smaller. This was in response to really what's going on in Ukraine and the provoking of Russia, and it's just like, what? Like, I like my I like my nuclear wars to not exist. Like the idea of this guy thinking that I need to write this article is insane. That this is really a thing, but I mean it is. It really is, and we are really. There's a disaster or there was a flood, I believe, in North Carolina recently. This is 2024. Those people didn't receive they didn't receive a notice and a warning. Things kind of just happened, and that's when it comes down to a lot of things that could just happen. I think a lot of us are going to have to understand that things things could change in an instant, and we have to kind of be aware of that idea of mass change happening in the blink of an eye. Now, in real times of disasters, another thing that was really that was important to note was the idea of basic triage, right? So if you're ever in a position to where there are people injured, kind of, if you have an ability in terms of, if you're in a position, try to place those people in categorization of how they'll be treated, and that could really help the emergency response teams that come out. So people who are lightly injured or injured in a certain segment of their body or something like that, trying to kind of create those categories to relate to emergency response teams. Those are ways in which normal people can somewhat make a difference, and in these type of situations. And this idea of like how to survive a disaster, Mary seen like the one problem is, you know, the faith that she has in our response as a nation, you know, our national organizations and how they respond, you know, like something like in terms of the outline for the Red Cross, or for the Red Cross in particular, or you know, emergency response placements. You're supposed to have X amount of square footage allotted. You're gonna have plenty of clean towels. You're gonna have plenty of pillows. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think things are going to be like that. I don't have faith that Marie has that, you know, things are going to be like that. And another thing that really I'm having really questionable, I'm coming into a kind of conflict with Marie, was the idea of really in this book, Surviving Emergency Disasters, there was kind of an a way in which she relayed what to do in medical emergencies that assumed that there would be emergency help coming in on the way. A lot of, you know, good information for a lot of different things, but absolute, like, there is no way that this is, you know, this should be framed, you know, in terms of a society. If you believe that society is going to operate in the same fashion, or in a, you know, or society is going to operate, period, in a lot of these situations, you may be at a disadvantage from people that understand that it doesn't necessarily happen. You know, it doesn't necessarily happen in terms of the idea of phone being able to call an emergency and get someone available. A lot of people, a lot of our staff and medical staff, they were, you know, the idea of overwhelming our, you know, staff, and we have, like, even with this COVID idea, this, you know, there was an overload that we simply could not, like, we could not fix in a situation like COVID. And the idea here is, this is pretty tame in terms of what could happen, right? So regardless of how you feel about, you know, COVID, the idea of that overwhelming, you know, our medical establishment is really, really troublesome, in the idea that, you know, of understanding how bad things could be for, you know, a different or more virulent disease, or, you know, any type of disaster that is more that could causes more disruption to society in general. Now, this idea of calling, I want to mention this idea of phone signals and things of that nature, and how, you know, the during a natural disaster. one thing that's really going to, or really should stick with a lot of people is this idea of phone towers being overwhelmed with phone calls, or not being able to, for some reason, if you're not able to reach someone in the immediate area. There is also the calls that we make, say someone outside the area, or to calls made to outside the area. They actually have a better chance of getting through. So if things in the area kind of get wired or get a little bit wiry, things outside the area are things that could also help as well. Now, like I said, she does have some helpful tidbits, and that's definitely one that's very helpful. Another thing when it comes down to communication in these times, try to understand that, or if you have, you should have something on your shopping list in the future, to get a ham radio, right? So radios are going to be something that could most certainly help during these times, and they could the idea is a lot of where we could transmit a lot of information through radio in times of emergency, and we will do that sometimes, or hopefully all the time. Geez, but that is definitely something. Radio organizations, in terms of just kind of a regular meetup or a hobby meetup is something they really get into for like regular radio organizations or hand radio, and really help you gain proficiency in using radios. Another thing is that at some point we talk about what could happen in a case of a just regular emergencies, right? So not necessarily apocalypse ending events. What can happen during, particularly what I have here is like what to look for. Like if you're a victim of a robbery, for any case, kind of looking at what these guys have, or kind of take note of what's being touched in terms of things like that. So also if you're in the car and car thieves, or you suspect someone's about to steal your car, or someone's trying, car alarms are also something that can deter thieves, right? So like that loud noise, use that to your advantage. And trains also have emergency lines, so being able to, I'm pretty sure contact, in terms of contacting, or just contacting the train operator for any things. Those are just kind of random things to note. When it comes down to being in the wilderness, also berries. There's a quote here, in terms of white and yellow might kill a fellow, right? So that's kind of a rhyme to understand that white and yellow berries may very much be, or will likely kill, or will be bad to eat, right? And red berries kind of have there's a gray area with red berries, or there's a significant gray area with red berries. I'm not sure how, I'm not a nature expert. I don't know exactly what to expect, but if I'm ever in a position, I would stay away from white, yellow, and also red berries just to be safe. Toothpaste is good to. It also prevents scratching, so if you ever have a rash or something like that, putting toothpaste on it might be something that helps. And this idea of like a volcano erupting is something that a lot of us really haven't considered, very seriously. And if, in terms of understanding the destruction, in terms of how, like, the resulting destruction in the case of a actually erupting, the damage, of course, the volcano itself, in terms of the lava that leaves the volcano, would naturally be something to worry about. But the volcanic ash, right, in terms of the ash, people don't really understand, but that ash is something that it can disrupt engines, but also it can cause acid rain, worldwide acid rain. So like for months, in terms of changing the landscape, this is something that could very much do that. And having that understanding of rain during periods where you do have volcanic ash. Of course, it's going to also block the sunlight and disrupt a lot of the natural order of things that comes from really disrupting sunlight, right? It's definitely, when it comes down to volcanic ash and what it could lead to, you should understand that a society or worldwide event, you should understand things will change very significantly if that ever becomes an issue. Now, when it comes down to preparation for natural disasters, one thing is securing heavy objects in the home. So if you have like large paintings or things like that, they do this sometimes in I believe it's California. They have a regular kind of a regular event where they kind of mock disasters and basically do what they can to prepare and prepare for disasters, but also this idea of this really makes me think of an event in terms of creating an event for really helping making preparation entertaining in so many different ways. So we have, I would say, a lot to really pack in there. But the element of making it entertaining and making kind of a regular thing, or if your community, naturally started to create events and entertaining events around like this idea, it can turn into something that can save a lot of lives in general. That's something that's powerful that a lot of us can do now, and I think a lot of us should do that in terms of as I'm speaking now in really November 2024. I think we really can start to incorporate things like that into our regular lives that would make us more resilient. Um, Now, also, um, when it comes down to banks and banking, apparently it's mentioned that small banks are going to be more secure than big banks for if there is an economic collapse. And a lot of us are very much invested in, don't realize how much we have invested into large banks. But if there is a way to divvy things up and kind of create that, create that, when it comes down to really surviving economic collapse, divvying your investments up between banks is one thing, but also keeping some amount of cash on hand is also going to be something. When it comes down to our infrastructure now, like I said, this is in 2024. There's a blue screen of death for that was that took a lot of stores out of business for for a day. And I think that is really telling in terms of what could come out of something like that. The reliance that we have on the electronic world in general, I think we need to understand and really, really come to terms with. Now, of course, war is, if there is ever an historical record of war times, of kind of what we come into, we would likely be in those times now in terms of a track record and understanding a progression, like understanding really the period of war. In retrospect, they may look at us as actively in a war right now, and I think a lot of us should understand that. The United States has been very good at separating its citizens from what goes on in the rest of the world. And I think we really have to understand that it's not necessarily the everyday life that you see now, like I said, changing in the blink of an eye due to something like a man-made disaster is becoming more and more likely. A lot of us are kind of where this bubble, the United States has created a bubble, and I think a lot of us live in a bubble. But we really should understand that idea that we're really holding an umbrella over our heads, and in hopes that and thinking that it is going to shield us from shield us from very real consequences of our government's actions abroad. Very much something I want people to understand and take more seriously is this idea of preparation and kind of, even if you're still in society, making baby steps to prepare for and make yourself more resilient in this time is going to be something that I think a lot of us are going to or a lot of us may come into appreciation for and appreciate in the future, and our descendants will appreciate in the future. That definition of a human being more resilient, that is something that individuals our individual selves kind of are a result of. Our society has been very much trying to make us comfortable and really, really less resilient in a lot of different ways. Whether that be on purpose or on accident is up for debate, but the idea of what is the result, I think a lot of us need to understand that and get back to the idea of what it means to be a resilient human. One, there's a pretty big note here, or pretty something I want people to understand. During a natural disaster or a natural crisis, percentage-wise, I want people 75% of people are going to be inactive, 15% of people are going to be proactive, 10% people are going to be simply be a problem in a lot of different situations. Understanding that percentage, that breakdown, may very well help you understand hopefully you're going to be the 15% of people who are proactive and not one of the 75% inactive. And if you find yourself in the 10% of people that are going to be a problem, I failed here. I completely failed here. But the idea is survival. Some people may think that, hey, someone's gonna, when it comes down to this idea of this book, we're gonna wait for the lines to clear so we can call emergency services to get this person help. That's probably not going to be the case. I don't want people to wait for that situation and that outcome. And I think a bit of cynicism would definitely help you guys. And like I said, the idea of a society, collapsing, it may be something that is temporary. There are situations that are temporary. And there very much could be situations to where, somebody could be on the way. In those situations, always kind of keep a bit of cynicism with you to guard against this idea. And in terms of temporary situations, another thing was if you guys ever have a situation or a something on your kind of doomsday list, getting a solar charger that charges phones is going to be something that may help a lot of people. Something during some kind of I want to say the outage that happened in Texas. It was a major outage or something like that, and the idea of having phones charged up, could make a tremendous difference for a lot of people in terms of contacting emergency services, and really, really really help us in terms of situations that may be temporary. And also, this is also something that's going to help you, having that idea of a solar panel or a solar charger. Those things are things that can help you in both temporary and long-lasting situations. These are things that can come in handy in a lot of different situations. Now, let me see. This idea of something that is one of these. Something to remember is schwa FIFO. And the idea here is SH is shelter, WA is water, FI is fire, and FO is food. Schwa FIFO. And that is if that helps somebody really remember that, that's really good. And the idea is these are the natural things we need to survive, right? So when it comes down to this and understanding survival, I think it's something that really can come in handy in terms of understanding and ranking how useful things can be and are. Now, element of, kind of coming back to this breakdown, the breakdown of percentage, 75% useful, 15 or 75% inactive, 15% trying to really be useful in events, and 10% just completely not being useful. Is that breakdown is helpful, but also understand, like, we respond in terms of the way we respond. There are 3 F's that help us really get to, like, or really get down to the biological response system. And the 3 F's are: we fight, we flight, flight, or freeze. And this is something that I think really helps people understand, much more than what happens in a major crisis event. In terms of right now, I would say a significant portion of our society is in a freeze response, because when it comes down to understand, like, a survey, if I put out a survey, who trusts the government, there will be an overwhelming response of saying, or do you trust the government? There will be an overwhelming response of just flat out, no, I don't trust the government. But when it comes down to the disconnect between that response and really how we act on a daily basis, these people, these entities get 30% of, or get whatever taxes, whatever percentage. This is something that we need to understand. These people get a significant percentage of what we do. And that disconnect, I think it really is a freeze response for a lot of us. And when it comes down to what we're looking at right now in terms of this idea of society, the results of society, I don't think we have people who are happy with where we're at now. They have essentially accepted this idea of survival as a freeze response. And I think a lot of people should understand that when it comes down to a renaissance, when it comes down to a renovation of society, this isn't going to be a passive, a passive movement. There has to be an act of renovation, and the idea is we have to kind of facilitate that in a lot of different ways, and we're gonna have to facilitate that with other people in a lot of different ways. Like I said before, games are entertainment to kind of help build resiliency, are going to be tremendous in terms of the helpfulness, how we can do things in making kind of events and celebrations to maybe like share apocalypse recipes and like test resilience, like the idea of shutting off the power for your home for like a night or something like that, and having friends over or something like that. Making a game out of it is going to be something that is going to be really, really powerful, I think, for installing resiliency in the society we have now. Another idea is another element was humans are kind of are really good at cooperating on a local or a small scale, and this cooperation doesn't seem to scale up in terms of keep the same effectiveness as it scales up. Starting small with your group of friends, I think will be something that would, or your group of friends or your neighbors, this is something that is going to be, I think, much more effective than what you initially realize. And this is something that really, really, like, the cooperation on a local or a smaller scale is going to be tremendous when compared to this idea of cooperating on larger scales. And these events and this understanding, I think, was it the Haiti response? I forget what response it was, but the idea of like people coming together and being able to respond. I think at some point they were telling Red Cross, this group of people was telling I want to say it was Haiti. They were telling Red Cross what to do, and the Red Cross was following their lead. And I think we should be prepared to really, really do and act in a lot of different situations like this. We have to understand that also, like, there's going to be a book reports on bartering at some point, but the collapse of economic society in general, I think we really have an over reliance on the banking or we have a reliance on the banking system that a lot of people don't quite understand. But in terms of really, really what could be the future, I think a lot of us should be prepared to, when it comes down to systems of bartering and what value we can create in a society that isn't necessarily, or that isn't attached to the technology that we know today. And that has been the apocalypse and the Renaissance. Please do all the YouTube podcast stuff to really try to help get more information out there, and including like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, or just I don't think you can like the individual podcast, but if you subscribe or something like that, that'd be awesome. And thanks, guys.